Hey there, Internet Drifters. It's Izanami-kun back with a Play and Write character development number 11. This time we will be developing the character of Jimbo. You may not be too familiar with him. We haven't really done a whole lot with him. He's sort of just a pick up stuff person. It's between him and Trancam, which one is the least favorite of the colony. We captured him in episode 20 and finally got him to join in episode 27. He's been waiting for a little bit to be developed. So here's his bio a little bit. He's got a lot going on. Before we really get into that, though, he's got this stab scar in his right eye, and I think that this interesting story, while I was gathering his information, I noticed people don't like him. This is how he feels about other people, and this is how people feel about him. Now, you would think that because we had to convince him to join us, you would think that people over here you would think that people would like him. And that he would like other people. For some reason, that doesn't seem to be true. And I could say, okay, well, obviously there's just something slow about him liking people. But I went to the person that likes him the most, which is the only one that has a positive social score for him. And I noticed this is her opinion. And he's disfigured. So I think this right eye thing made him disfigured. And when I look through here, I think if he didn't have that handicap, then these numbers would be a lot more reasonable. Something to think about going forward with him, because an eye is not that big of a deal. We should be able to find or make an eye at some point. So he's also abrasive. That doesn't help his scores. That's probably the rest of whatever's going on here. So like I said, like Albina, she would have been the one that dealt with him, because we're trying to get her social skills up so that she can give speeches and stuff. And that score just positive 18, negative 17. That just doesn't seem like she talked to him much at all. Anyway, we don't really need to do much with those. Those are just kind of interesting fun facts about Jimbo, because he's going to have a hard time socially. Let's look at who he is and who he has been. His only passion is melee, which really sets him up to be a throwaway character. I don't know. I don't have a good weapon for him, so I should probably work on that when we come back to the next episode. Because that is really all he wants to do. And all I've got him doing is hauling, for the most part. He does some construction, so he has a little bit more use than just hauling. But not much. It's 2s and 1s. It's got a couple 4s and a couple 5s. So yeah, not super rounded in his life. He was a shelter child, which I assume means that he was orphaned and raised in a shelter. Jimbo was, as an adult, an herb world rebel, and we got him from the Cannon Goblins, basically the pirate faction. So he obviously went out on the deep end, just like I hate everything, and decided to join the worst people ever. Jimbo clearly does not make good decisions. He can't. And I don't think he was set up kind of in a shitty way, because now he has this disfigurement and he is abrasive. So he's got a rough time socially. He probably had a lot of trouble fitting in pretty much everywhere. I mean, if he was raised in a shelter, I guess something must have happened there. Something that wasn't that big of a deal, not super traumatic, maybe not necessarily innocuous, but I don't know, maybe they beat them whenever they did something wrong kind of stuff. Like not great, but not the worst kind of trauma that people have been through. And he just developed this terrible outlook on life. I mean, that's what I'm going to say, because, I mean, how else do you explain going from being a shelter child to an herb world rebel and being abrasive and somehow also psychically sensitive? I think all of those are wrapped up in, and he's incapable of intellectual, which means his perspective is so, I'm going to say delusional to an extent, that logic doesn't filter in. If good things happen to him, it doesn't really register. He's just like, yeah, I'm just going to be cynical no matter what. It's like one of those cranky, crabby old men that had a rough life, and just like, this is just the way the world is, and that's just where I guess he probably started off that way after growing out of being in the shelter. Just like, well, this is the world. Fuck it. And then he decided to rebel against it. Just like, there's no point. I'm just going to burn it down. And his favorite thing in the world is to get into fights, fist fights. Or melee fights. So he essentially is a tool. I mean, there's nothing else to do with him. He's not a super productive member of society. I can't do much with social with him. He might have an interest, but that's nothing. That's not enough to do anything with. He's not particularly artistic. I guess I could, if I needed, to gain money and make him into an artist, I could put him to work doing art, maybe. And then maybe he'd find an outlet for his cynical anger and anguish, and might find some kind of peace. That's really the best I can see coming out of this whole situation with Jimbo. And I'll still keep him on construction on a standby, every once in a while when Per needs some help. Jimbo can handle the walls, the basic shit. Maybe doors. Maybe. So we'll come over here and say he had a slightly traumatic shelter life. Harshly reprimanded. I'm just going to say gray childhood, and what I mean by that is like when you think of stories about orphans and stuff, you can either go in the direction of Little Orphan Annie, which is bright and colorful, like her hair is bright red, so it's kind of one of those, yeah, things suck, but I'm going to try to do whatever I can to make them better, and there's a happy ending-ish to it. Or you can think of, I don't remember the name of the play, but it's the Thank You Sir, May I Have Another. And that one is like really gray. Everybody looks basically the same. They're all white kids with some variety of brown hair, and dirt is everywhere. There's not a lot of color. It's just gray. And I don't think it has a happy ending either. It's pretty rough. I could be misremembering that, but the point is, that's what I mean by gray childhood. Like nothing really good happened. And maybe nothing super bad happened. It just was that the shit of life sort of reality. It wasn't like there was any sexual mistreatment or any inhumane atrocities. Just gray. With no hope. No childish hope. No time. No time given for childish hope. All work and no play made Jimbo a dull boy. And it shows. It really does show. Grew up cynical, life-hating, rebelling against his concept of the world because he didn't want to hate life. He wanted to live, but he's like, life is shit. So I'm going to rebel against all the things that are shit. Makes sense. Makes sense to me, you know. And he had a delusional idea of what the world was. So was misguided in his rebellious attempts. Because basically he joined the shit of the world to attack the good in the world. And that is dysfunctional. That's not what his perspective would have wanted. From his perspective, he wanted that good life. And so instead of joining that good life, his mind wouldn't allow him to see that as the good life. His mind would have then just been like, well, everything is shit, so I'm just going to lash out against all of it. And the only place that will really allow you to go inevitably, eventually, is to the shit of the world. Because the shit of the world is what wants to destroy everything and take it. They want to take the good from other people. And then it's not good anymore. So it kind of, when you take the good from the good people, it becomes bad. It's not rewarding. And it becomes more of the shit of the world that reinforces the idea that the world is shit. Like that's kind of the cycle that Jimbo found himself stuck in with the pirates. And then he impaled himself on our spikes, like so many of them have done. But somehow survived. Somehow he was able to survive that, and he has a chance to build something with us, with our colony. It's another situation where he's looking for something, but I don't even know that he knows that he's looking, much less what for. I think really what he's looking for is that good life. Like, this isn't a mystery of what he's looking for, like some of the other ones. He's looking for the good in the world. But he's looking in all the wrong places. Or he has looked in all the wrong places and gone about it all the wrong ways. He's not very smart. He can't logic things. And so it sort of has to spontaneously happen to him in a traumatic experience. And I mean, that's sort of what happened. He came to us and we gave him a traumatic experience. If I were to try to write a story about Jimbo's life, I just don't see a whole lot to write about. A story about Jimbo's life, it would either have to be a comedy that revealed how ridiculous he was constantly, or it would have to be one of those weird conglomerate stories where it's about the other people, but he provides a unique perspective that adds to the flavor. I'm maybe it's just my ability as a writer to not see much more to do with him as a story, and that'll happen, you know. Every person is different in their skill set, and I do not have the skill set to write about Jimbo. Jimbo could have, I'm sure that there were other people at the shelter, and he could have taken comfort in sticking with some of the shelter children and building a life that way. But he didn't. He fucked off and went to the pirates and rebelled against everything. And I've known people that have that sort of similar behavior in real life, and it just doesn't interest me to write about. But I do like to challenge myself to find something, some kind of story to be had. So the best I can come up with is a story about the defining moment where he really solidified his ideas about the world and what he was going to do about it. And I'm going to say it's going to be when he was a child. Or, not a child, but like when he was maybe mid-teens, 14, 15, somewhere around there. And I'm going to say that he had a moment where his guardian told him to do something and told another kid to do something. It always has to have a comparison. So, comparison moment. And the kid followed the rules. Jimbo didn't. But because the kid followed the rules, the task got done. And there was no punishment. And there was another moment, because, you can't have just one. That same kid and him were paired again. And something happened that the kid did wrong. And because the kid was upset that he ended up doing all of the work from the task earlier, the kid blamed Jimbo. So let's say he broke something. Broke a chair, broke a vase, I don't know, broke something. Blamed it on Jimbo because he was resentful for earlier laziness. And Jimbo was punished. And you would think that would, be like, oh, well, that's karma. You didn't help. And then you got the reward for it, or at least didn't get any punishment for not helping. So later on, you got punished. It's karma. That's not how Jimbo saw it. Jimbo saw them as two separate moments, because remember, he's not very intellectual. So he wouldn't have logicked it as being connected in any way. He would have seen it as being, well, I didn't do what I was told to do, and somebody else did it for me, and it was fine. But then somebody lies about me and says I do something that I didn't do, and then I get punished. I can use those things. I can tell people I did something that I didn't do. And I can take people's accomplishments and be rewarded for it. Of course, then he'd have to have a third moment where he tested that theory. So maybe the kid did some extra work and got extra rations or something. And Jimbo took the rations. But he didn't just take the rations. Maybe he left some crumbs in the kid's bed. So that when the kid went to go tell on him, he had an alibi of sorts. And said, but look, there's crumbs in his bed. He was eating in his bed. I didn't eat it. He just wants more. He's just being greedy. And the kid got in trouble. And Jimbo got the reward. And that would make, I mean, that does sound like somebody who is abrasive. I don't like that story, and I'm never going to write it. But feel free, if you like a challenge or if you enjoy that concept of a story, maybe you have this skill set, maybe it's interesting to you. It's not interesting to me. It's just sad and a little pathetic. I don't like that kind of view, and I can make suppositions about it to come up with well, this may have happened this way, but I don't know that I can actually write it in a compelling way through that perspective. It's abrasive to me. So do with it what you will. That's all we have for today. Like if you liked the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Check me out on Patreon. Check out my website, izanami-kun.com, and I will see you guys in the next video.